Welcome to another episode of the Legal Authority Podcast. My name is Jay Rathman with the beautiful
Judy Goldberg.
Yes, Judy and I have been together for a long time as great friends, worked together. She's a 30-year practicing attorney, super successful, retired early, came down to South Florida, and now we get to have the real fun, right? You wanted to be part of what we're doing now, which is great. Today's guest is Joe Lawson. He is a family attorney in San Antonio, Texas. This guy's awesome. He's built a huge practice, churning just tons and tons of cases. He gets like 150, 200 calls a month from new opportunities. It's insane what he's doing. His story is really cool too, especially for the young attorneys that are listening that are thinking about going out on their own. He was an NYPD officer, retired in 2015. Well, while he was a cop, he was going to law school. So when he retired, he got his law degree, and then he moved to San Antonio and started working for a couple of other law firms, then went out on his own and just blew the top off the whole thing. So it's a fun interview. I'm excited to talk to him. So, and I know you and him have a lot in common, so you guys have some good chat too.
We do, both family law.
All right, so let's get to it. Fire it up.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Legal Authority Podcast, presented by TheLegalAuthority.com. Here are your hosts, Jay Rathman and Judith Goldberg.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Legal Authority Podcast, also known as That Legal Show all over social media. My co-host Judy Goldberg is with us again today. How are you, Judy?
I'm just great today. How are you?
Good. You look fabulous, like you're ready to go dancing as soon as we're done here, right?
I'm retired.
There you go. There you go. Well, the guy you should dance with is with us. His name's Joe Lawson. He's one of our clients actually at Digital Horsepower, and just a really fun guy and a huge success. Since we've started working together, we're super happy to be working with him. And, I think he's got some really good perspectives. He's built an incredible law practice, like multiple locations and lots of good stuff. So how are you, Joe?
Doing very well. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much. So obviously you're based in San Antonio. You started to grow and expand a little bit and even some additional practice areas, but let's kind of start from the beginning. Where were you in your life when you decided, hey, I want to be a lawyer?
So I was a police officer for the NYPD when I figured out that I wanted to go to law school. So that was in 1996. And I started law school in 1998 while I was a cop. Went through law school, got promoted to sergeant with the NYPD while I was in law school, and then stayed with the police department until I retired in 2015. And I practiced law in New York during the time that I was on the NYPD. That's
awesome. So you were a full-time cop, part-time lawyer.
Correct. Well, you're never a part-time lawyer. Unfortunately, right. I would like to claim that I was a part-time lawyer, but
right.
Law practice always takes full time.
So if I understand correctly, your path was pretty unique in the fact that you never worked for another firm. You didn't work for the prosecutor's office or anything. You literally just started taking clients while you were a police officer?
Correct. Well, I did do the administrative trials for the police department. So I did learn trial advocacy from the police department. But yes, you're correct. I never worked for a firm, never worked for, while I was a cop, I never worked for somebody. While I was in San Antonio, I did work for a couple of firms.
Okay, cool. So you retired from the police department in 2015 and moved to San Antonio, worked for a couple of firms, and then decided it was time to hang out your shingle?
Yep, go on my own.
That's awesome.
That's the decision I ever made.
Awesome. So when you went on your own, what was your plan, from a 10,000 foot view to make sure that you got clients, to make sure that, you were going to be successful? I mean, obviously you have a family you got to take care of. It's a big leap, right?
Yeah. So we didn't have a plan. My paralegal came over with me. My firm manager came over with me from the firm that we worked at. And the reason why I worked at another firm here in San Antonio is because I knew family law in New York. I didn't know family law in Texas.
Right.
I didn't know the nuances. So I did go to a firm to learn the nuances. And then I brought Amanda over with me. And our 10,000 foot overview was we jumped right into it, hoping that it was word of mouth. Now, we started out with Facebook, and that was not the best idea.
Yeah, social media doesn't really work with law firms. A lot of our clients that I talk to all the time, even prospective clients, they always ask, hey, do you manage our Facebook ads and Facebook profile as part of it? And we really don't only because we've never found it to move the needle, right? I mean,
No.
Especially with family law, here's the problem. If you're on Facebook, right, and let's say your wife also has access to your phone, and all of a sudden she starts seeing a bunch of ads from divorce lawyers, she's going to know the only reason that she's seeing those ads is because you're being retargeted because you were on Facebook looking for a divorce lawyer. And it just creates a lot of problems. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's even worse because you get into an argument with your wife, over nonsense.
Right.
And then you go to bed and then she's on Facebook or the husband's on Facebook playing. And because, Facebook knows everything, divorce lawyers start popping up. They fill out the form. Now the attorney would pay for it. And then the next day when it comes in, they're like, no, I don't want an attorney.
Right.
So now you just wasted a large sum of money with no return.
Right. Yeah. Facebook ads work for a lot of things. They don't work for lawyers.
Correct. And then that's when I found you, John. Well, you found me.
Yep. No. So, yeah. So that is interesting. So we found each other and, started working together. And I mean, pretty quickly, you started to see some success. I mean, I think just 3 or 4 months into it, you were already at about 100 calls a month. It was just a dramatic difference, right? Talk about that
Absolutely.
a little bit.
So we do two things with Google. I don't do pay-per-clicks because the people those are a lot of looky-loos.
Right.
And you and I discussed that where pay-per-clicks really don't work because, people click on it and you pay for it.
Right.
And even if you don't get a potential new client, you just have to pay for it. So I do a lot of LSAs, which is local service ads, which is really good through Google.
Yep.
And then the social media stuff that you've been doing through Google has been phenomenal. So we've been getting a lot of calls and a lot of inquiries through our website.
Yeah. So just for clarity, we don't do social media. What you're referring to is the organic stuff that we do to rank you in search engines when people are trying to find a family lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I have you, because I don't know the terms.
Yeah, no worries. But no, I'm certainly happy about that. And without getting too specific, since we started working together, you have greatly expanded our relationship to push into new practice areas, new locations, and that's been exciting. So
it has. It's been great.
Yep. So no, we enjoy working with you for sure. So don't want to forget about my beautiful co-host here. Judy's with us. So her story, and I think I told you this when we first started talking, Joe, she was my very first client. At the time I was doing some work for the NFL, and she called me and said, look, I don't care what you're doing. You're going to help me with this because the guy I've been having do this just isn't moving the needle, and come up with a strategy. And so I did, and we started working together, and we were already friends, and then the rest is history. But her background is family law in New York.
So, and Connecticut.
And Connecticut, yeah. So look, I know this podcast can now go for an hour without me saying another thing because you guys can chew the fat on the fun stuff. But,
Well, my experience was very similar to yours. As soon as I started with digital market, with the legal authority here, exponentially, I saw my call volume go up. And what was very interesting was that it was a market that was more inclined to sign quickly. There was a higher call rate, a close rate, which was phenomenal.
Yep.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted that you've had such a speedy and full exponential growth as well. What other areas are you looking to explore and grow?
So right now we're exploring into personal injury, just because the nature of Texas with all the trucks and all the roads here and all the people driving, we just felt that it was a market that is saturated. But I think with John's help, we're going to move up into the top 3 for Google and really grow the practice.
I mean, truck accidents, they're 6-figure legal fees every single time.
Mm-hmm. Motorcycles?
Yep. And motorcycles are big too. Yep. So I just got a text from Steven in our office, Joe. You had 158 calls just from your Google business profile for the month of September.
Wow.
Not even including the call tracking we do on your website. So you're probably close to 200. I know that all in it was 168 for August. So for people listening, Joe's a solo practitioner. Now he's grown his staff to help support, all the intake and helping him get the work done. But 168 calls in August and 158 just from your Google profile last month. How do you handle that?
So I have a really, really, really good support staff. I could not do it on my own. I do the majority of the PNC calls, which we call potential new clients, but I have trained people in my office to also do those calls, because if I'm in court, I can't do it.
Right.
It's a lot of juggling, because the staff is coming to me and asking me how to handle these things, and I'm still basically taking the calls. But it's a real support staff. And I see, when I do a lot of the PNC calls, I see the potential new clients calling other attorneys, and they're solo practitioners with no staff.
Right.
And that's the biggest warning that I could give any attorney. You need to have a support staff.
Yep.
Because if you grow like I did, knock on wood, if I didn't have my support staff, I wouldn't be able to do it. There's not enough time in the day.
Yep. So that's kind of what I want to get into now is, as you we know your story, right? You moved to San Antonio 2015, worked for a couple of firms, then you went out on your own, and obviously didn't have a plan. You're kind of like, hey, I'm just hoping that we can do word of mouth and just really grasping at any way to get new clients. Now, when you wake up in the morning, correct me if I'm wrong, the last thing you're worried about is, how am I going to survive and pay the bills this week? It's like, how am I going to keep up with it?
Correct. How am I going to keep up with it? I'm looking a couple of days in advance to see where I am I'm looking right now at Friday to see where I am, to see what I have to do, because I've already looked at Thursday the day before.
Right.
So I'm always planning ahead, and you have to plan ahead. If you don't plan ahead, you'll never be able to do anything.
Right. So let's talk about your staff, because you just touched on it. It's obviously so important to have a support staff. And I know Judy's got a take on this as well. I know your paralegal that you had, Sarah, she was with you for a long time. And she was a real key to your success, Judy, and you can talk about that. But Joe, talk about how important it is to be really dialed in with your staff, not just the people taking the potential calls, but your paralegals that are producing a lot of the work that you need to sign off on, and so on and so forth. How important is that, and what are some things that you learned that could really help somebody who's either thinking about going out on their own or has gone out on their own and just needs some efficiency and so forth?
Absolutely. So I do things differently than most law firms. Normally, most law firms have 2 or 3 paralegals, or even 1 paralegal. They would assign a certain number of cases to each paralegal. In that case, that paralegal would run with it. The way we do it differently here is I have a drafting paralegal, I have a discovery paralegal, I have a documents paralegal, e-filing and help out paralegal, I have a communications paralegal, and I have a scheduling paralegal, as well as a firm manager who's my head paralegal, that everything runs through her to me, because there's a lot of stuff that she could solve that doesn't need to be brought to my attention. And I'm not talking about legal things. I'm talking about just minor clerical
process.
Things.
Yeah.
Yes. But the key thing we did was breaking it up, compartmentalizing it. So there's not one paralegal that is overwhelmed because they have 60 cases and they're trying to do discovery. They're trying to do client communication. They're trying to make deadlines. They're trying to e-file. So by breaking it up, we felt that it was more efficient for the firm, because now a client always gets a phone call from the communication paralegal. The drafting paralegal doesn't have to take time to stop to talk to a client for 30 minutes to find out about what's going on in their case. So that person can now just efficiently just draft rather than taking the time out to speak to a client. And then the discovery paralegal works on just complying all the discovery together. And with the help of her administrative assistant, who's also a paralegal, the 2 of them get discovery, because that's another pitfall, is discovery. When I was in New York, a solo practitioner, no help, discovery was a nightmare, because it's so many documents that you have to bait stamp, and you have to get together and compile and make sure that it's done all correctly and verify it. And it just becomes very problematic.
So you kind of have like an assembly line to a point where everybody's responsible for their specific set of tasks. And then, they push it to the next person, and then they push it to the next person. What I like about that is it's efficient, but really nothing falls through the cracks.
Correct. And everybody is cross-trained. So every paralegal can draft. If we come into a bind, a paralegal can draft, or a paralegal can talk to the client. But yes, you're right. Things don't fall through the cracks because each person is assigned a task.
Now, do you use a CRM or like a practice management system that helps you manage all this and help push things down the road?
So we use Clio Grow, but we don't have a CRM to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. No, Clio's great. And we actually have a marketing automation platform. I'm not even sure if you're familiar with this or not, Joe. We just came out with this recently. If not, I'll have Steven reach out to you. But it can help you manage a lot of this, and it is a CRM, and we can integrate it with Clio. So,
okay.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay for it. I mean, you're a client, you get it for free anyway, and we can help you set it up and integrate it. So if you want to use it, I think it can help you just kind of keep things organized, and it can help with some marketing automation. People can text you about their case, and it's got automation in how it replies, and it's pretty cool. So
perfect.
We'll share that with you.
Awesome.
So, Judy, your story is a little bit different than Joe's.
Well, I focused only in the family law divorce matters, and mediation as well. Simultaneously, I started about 10 years before I retired, building a practice of mediation in Florida. So I was oftentimes in Florida as well. Yep. But my support staff was incredibly important. That first phone call, that call that's made, how it's answered, how it's returned, and the customer service is crucial in building and maintaining a business. And to get the word out and building a brand, yep. That's so important.
Yep. No, I agree. Hey, here's a funny story, Joe, because I know you're a big Giants fan. And
I don't want to talk about that.
Well, listen, I'm a Bills fan. I don't want to talk about what happened. They got killed by Jacksonville. I'm not killed, but I mean, if a team that loses to the Jets and a team that loses to the Jaguars in the same season is not a Super Bowl team.
I know.
I have already taken the wind out of my sails for this year. I am not going to the Super Bowl. I'm not buying tickets. I already know. I'm saving about $20,000 in the month of February. But anyway, here's a funny story. When I was working with the NFL, one of the things that I was doing was selling ads in game day programs. One of the ones that I was responsible for was the New York Giants game day program. So I said to Judy one day, I'm like, hey, I got this really cool idea for an ad for you. She goes, what's that? So imagine this. If you're looking at the ad, there's Judy standing there in a suit on the left, and next to her is this big chained up 160-pound English bulldog. And the caption above the photo would just say, if you need a divorce, hire the bulldog on the left.
That's awesome.
I thought it would have been cool and just put it right in the Giants game day program, right? But,
we didn't go to billboards, however.
Yeah, we didn't do it. But I thought it was a cool idea.
But you are correct. People don't realize that we are in a customer service business.
Yep.
And it still is a business. Yes, we're helping people, but at the end of the day, I can't tell you how many times when I had to eat some crow and return retainers, even though I did nothing wrong, because I needed to protect my brand. Right. And you're 100% right about customer service. And most attorneys don't realize that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in dealing with other lawyers and the court system. In Danbury, Connecticut, which was my primary place of practice, it was mostly on your feet, rather than New York, where it's mostly on the paper in submissions. So I was always in court. So it was paramount that my staff was there at the ready and liaisons with all the clients. I mean, especially in family law, they need a lot of hand-holding.
Yep.
And repetitive direction. It's too much volume is coming at them.
Well, and part of that hand-holding is they're just going through a really difficult time. It can be complex financially. It can be complex if they've got kids involved. It's not that clients are needy. There's a lot of moving parts to those cases that they need to understand.
It is.
So it just takes a lot of extra hand-holding in that respect, I think. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yes. And that's another thing. People they want to speak to somebody, and sometimes I have to correct my staff about, they try to rush a client off the phone, but sometimes they just want to talk to somebody, because you're right. They're going through a very difficult time right now, and they just want to speak, and they just want somebody to be heard, because if it's a divorce, they can't talk to their spouse who they would talk to. So they're going to talk to their attorney. And you have to be patient with them. And that's another key thing for my success is when I do my potential new client calls, I don't rush them off the phone after 15 minutes.
Right.
I listen to them. If it takes 45 minutes, it takes 45 minutes. And then I'll catch up on the back end. But you have to let people talk.
Yep.
And you have to listen to people.
No, I agree.
I think it's really interesting how you balance the personal injuries portfolio and the family. I mean, with PI, I've always seen it as a volume business. You need that volume, and it's very well taken care of by a paralegal and a tightly run, educated staff. In the family side, it's very different. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. And I do a little bit of criminal law just based upon my background, but it's not that's not the majority of my practice. But yes, you're right. Especially with PI, you're dealing with a lot of also people who are injured, and you're making sure that they're following up with their doctors because you're trying to build the case, and your support staff is helping them along the process. They're holding their hand throughout the whole process. But you're 100% correct.
Joe, let me ask you a question. And I say this to a lot of lawyers when we're talking about, discovery of whether or not we're a good fit for them, or we're the right agency for them, or they're the right type of client for us. And I can't implore this enough, because I just don't think a lot of attorneys understand this. When they say, well, a lot of what you do, I can do myself. Okay. So, I can write content myself. Does that mean you can write optimized content? Are you targeting the right keywords that Google tells you to target? Or are you guessing, thinking what people are searching, right? And the point I'm getting at is, when it comes to driving consistent calls, you have to obviously be able to rank on Google. Everybody knows that. So when I tell attorneys, here's an analogy on why you shouldn't do this. So if I'm in San Antonio, I'm at a Spurs game, and I have one too many beers and I get pulled over, do you think it's a good idea that I represent myself? I mean, I know lawyers. I've been working with lawyers for 20 years. I practically know everything about lawyers in my mind and about the law. So should I represent myself, or am I going to get a better result if I call you?
Of course. I can't tell you how many calls that I get where people just are trying to get free advice and they want to do it themselves. And what I tell them is, do you know, like, for example, your DWI example, do you know how to file a motion to suppress?
Right.
No. And then the way I usually do it is I ask somebody, like for you, John, what do you do for a living?
Right. I own my marketing agency.
No, I know you do.
Right.
But you work in
something other than law.
Digital marketing.
Right.
So I couldn't tell you the first thing about digital marketing. I called it social media. Do you know how to admit evidence or suppress evidence in a court case? Of course not.
Right. No, and that's my whole point is, you're saying that it'd be stupid for me to represent myself, which I agree with, but it's also not very intelligent of a decision, I think, for law firms to try to do what we do themselves, because, we're in this every day. And Joe, you're a perfect example to see the results we get. We know how to do this. And that to me, I think is kind of the same analogy. I shouldn't represent myself in court. You shouldn't try to do this yourself in Google. And in your case, obviously that's the case, but.
No, you're right. And I don't know the trending things on Google. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with Steven from your office. I have your phone number. I just don't bother you. Steven's my go-to person. And about how he tells me about how things are changing and trends are changing, and how you have to change certain things for my search engines optimization. Yep. And I don't know how to do that. Plus, and that's not my forte. I need my goal is to bring clients in the door, give them a satisfactory outcome, and get the case resolved. Yep. I don't have enough time. When would I do that?
Right.
I'm married, so sure. I can do it at 10 o'clock at night, and I need to get some sleep. So you're 100% right. An attorney should not be doing their SEO stuff or anything with Google, because I don't have time to sit on the phone with Google for an hour.
Right. You need to understand. Yep. You need to understand the basics of what's going on, and I think we do a pretty good job of educating our clients. But you really need to align yourself with somebody who is an expert, who can consistently get the job done, so that you don't have time to do it. You're busy, taking calls from prospective new clients and pulling in $5,000-$10,000 retainers, which is more than what we cost. If we get you one new client a month, we're more than paying for ourselves. But if you end up with multiple new clients a month like you have, it's a jackpot. Your return's got to be 15, 20 to 1 probably, which is great.
Yes. And the advice that I give attorneys is, and I have attorneys that have left, working for firms and going on their own, and I still give them the advice. You have to find somebody who is a good fit. Like you and I were a great fit.
Yep.
I had one of the bigger companies prior to you that I'm not going to mention their name, but they're a very, very big company in the
we know who they are.
Legal.
I won't mention
Okay.
it.
Yeah, and they do a lot of form generation, legal research, and I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But I was just another number for them, right? So my website, when you and I first spoke, John, looked exactly like another family law attorney in the same area.
Yep.
Where it was the exact same thing. So
That particular company, I know of a case in Atlanta, Georgia. They ranked 5 personal injury law firms in the same building. How's that not a conflict? Right?
Yeah,
like we won't work with a competitive firm to you because we're going to do the same thing for them that we're doing for you. So if you're ranked number 1 and they're ranked number 2, they're pissed because they're like, well, we pay you 2. Why can't we rank number 1 instead of Joe for a little while? Like we have control of it, which we don't. And then you're pissed because we're directly responsible for the person that's on your coattails taking some of the calls that should go to you. So we can't win for winning. So we just eliminate that conflict. I don't understand why other agencies don't have that same policy.
Well, it's about money. But so that was the thing that really sold me. One of the things that sold me to your firm was that you said, no, we're only going to represent you in San Antonio market for family law. And I said, well, I do criminal stuff too. Sorry, we already have a client here. I can't help you with that.
Right.
And that's what really, really pushed me to your side, where I was your only focus in San Antonio.
Right. For family.
You weren't trying to get the guy next door to me.
Right.
The same amount of calls, where's your loyalty?
Right. Well, and I think, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but I think because we did that, obviously you appreciated it and so forth, but as I said earlier, our relationship has expanded tremendously because, I think partly because of that, because going in that we're not going to compete with you behind your back,
Correct. That was the main thing why I pushed over to your side.
Cool.
For sole practitioners, it's particularly hard to carve away the time to do the business that we have to do. And one of those is selecting the right digital marketer. And I had some bad experiences with, like you pick the names that are known, and they come in and they have all the nice suits on, 4 or 5 of them, tell them every 6 months as I would complain what's happening with my phones. They were not ringing. And it was, well, we'll do this and we'll do that. They left, and that was the end of it. Nothing changed. And very fortuitous for me, I met John. And it was, and we were together about 15 years or more.
Yep.
I was first page, number 1, right there, consistently. Never paid for a click.
Yep.
It was all organic. And it was just wonderful. I never had to worry after that. And then he opened the market for me in Florida. So, that's why I'm here today.
Yep.
My success is directly attached to that.
Yeah, and you know what's cool, Joe? Now she is working with our new law firm clients as they come on.
Very nice.
It's awesome. What a cool story to tell, right? She just talks about her particular experience, and you either want to build your firm or you don't. If you want to build your firm, we can help you, right? And she creates the plan, and I execute the strategy with my team, Stephen, as you know, and the rest of the team, and it just works. It's keep it simple, right? Give Google exactly what they want, how they want it. They'll reward you.
Yes. Another thing about a team, the digital marketing team that you pick, they also have to be responsive. And that one prior to you, I would send an email and I wouldn't get an email back for a few days. Or I would get I'm out of the office until September 6th. If it's an emergency, call this person.
Yep.
I can tell you from your firm, if I text Stephen, he immediately responds or sends me a message. I'm on a call. I'll call you back in a couple of minutes. Yep. And it never fails that I always get a phone call returned to me very quickly.
Well, and you and I have texted a bunch on the weekends too, more about, football and whatnot, football. But you can reach me, at any time. So
absolutely. And I never need to, because you have such an amazing staff that is so receptive to my needs that I don't need to call. We could chit chat about football or the weather or something like that. But I know I have your number if I need it.
Yep.
And I can give you a perfect example of your staff. We had an issue with our website. Somebody put something on blogs.
Yeah. I remember it got hacked because you had it still hosted somewhere else. And,
somewhere else.
Yep. And we were able to fix it, clean it up, and then push it to our server, and now it's fine.
immediately.
Yep.
So there was no, which could affect my business. When there's pornography on my website, people looking and searching, who wants to hire an attorney that can't keep his house clean?
Right.
So it's very important to have a digital marketing team that is receptive and is going to be accessible to the person. And I don't mean calling at midnight or anything like that. I'm talking about during business hours.
No, but if you called me at midnight, I'd answer the phone.
I know you would.
Because I know it can't wait till the next day. If Joe Lawson's calling me at midnight, I better take this. It must be important.
Exactly.
But into what you were saying, just to wrap that part up, is because your site was hosted on another server, we weren't able to see that. Like, unless we would know to go dig into it, which we didn't, because we didn't see any of that come through. Now that it's on our server, you'll never have to deal with that because we can solve those problems before you even see it, right? So
absolutely. And that was my naivety of not knowing social media and hosting and stuff like that to not originally bring it over to you guys. Again, that's why attorneys shouldn't be doing this.
Yep.
You should be doing it.
Yeah. So for any attorneys that are interested in exploring and having a conversation with Judy or myself, just go to thelegalatthority.com/podcast. There's a form right there that you can just fill out. It'll take 30 seconds. If you have questions that you want us to bring up to future guests, you can do the same thing there. You can actually make an appointment to talk to Judy or myself or both of us. So, always happy to have those discussions. And Joe, would you recommend us to somebody that's interested?
Oh, absolutely. And even then, if somebody listens to this podcast, an attorney, and wants to get an unbiased opinion, because, they may not think, if they talk to you, obviously you're trying to sell them the business, but if they want to speak to me, I'll give them an honest opinion, which I believe I spoke to somebody from New York.
Yeah, you've helped us a few times.
Me and I gave them the good and the bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. So as we close, Joe, what I want to do, and I wish we had time to do more of this, you're like the perfect person, I think, to talk about to young attorneys that are thinking about going on their own or have already gone on their own and now they want to build their firm. Just take the floor and talk about maybe any of the pitfalls that you wish you could do over that would have saved you time and or money, some of the good things that you did that really helped you propel. I mean, if an attorney says to you, Joe, I wanted to go on my own, give me the goods. What's the best way to do this?
So you have to realize, again, we talked about it before, is customer service. So you have to realize that you're dealing with people and you have to really speak to people and listen to them. And, sometimes their cases don't go wrong or right, and they go wrong. And you really have to fix that for that client, because as you're well aware, John, Google My Business, people live and die by those reviews, as do I. Yep. And that's what I tell all attorneys. I live and die by Google reviews. And if somebody puts a negative review out, I have to really call that person and try to fix it. And sometimes it's even if you did the work, and sometimes it's giving back the retainer, even though you've done the work and you did your best job. You sometimes have to do that. And some attorneys think that I'm an attorney, my head is so big that I'm an attorney, I passed the bar, that I can't stoop down and listen to somebody. I'm the attorney, you have to listen to me. That's not the way it works.
Right.
You have to listen to your clients. And it's really, the pitfall is, don't think you're better than your client. You have to listen to that client and really give them the customer service that they want.
Yep.
My staff sometimes talks to them and they don't, they get a little snippy with the client, and I have to pick up the pieces and just listen to them and talk them through it. So one of the major pitfalls is really client communication. That is the biggest pitfall that I see that attorneys don't do. And that's how I get clients, because I listen to them.
I mean, what's the old school joke, the biggest stigma about attorneys that people hate? I can never talk to my lawyer. I can never get a call back. I can never get on the phone with them. I agree with you. You just have to talk to them.
Yeah. And my staff gets mad at me when, sometimes I'll return a retainer. But for that retainer that I return, and the not having a negative review is going to grow my business 10 times what that initial retainer is. And they don't see the business aspect of the law firm. where I do, and I'm looking for the future. I'm not looking at the moment where it may be $2,500 or $5,000 that I'm returning, when I can,
Right.
that negative review could hurt me $50,000 down the road.
Yeah. So here's something that a lot of attorneys don't know. And this has happened, Google does these big core updates every 3 or 4 months. And in their most recent core update, and really for the last year, they've been pushing and pushing, but this last one really hits it hard. Local reviews are now the #1 ranking factor in Google for local search. So it's not just the number of reviews, but it's also the recency of reviews. So, for example, Joe, if you've got 50 reviews and Judy has 100 reviews, but you're getting 2 or 3 reviews every month for the last 6-8 months or the last year, and Judy's most recent review was from February, you're going to outrank her 9 out of 10 times. If you have the same content and everything else is equal, you're going to outrank her every time. Google wants to see recent reviews. They take it really seriously. And another ranking factor is respond to the reviews. Engage with your reviews. If it's a bad review, publicly state, how you want to fix it. Can we talk offline? I'll make this right. If it's a good review, say thank you. But engage with your reviews. That helps.
Jay, can you address what that means, a local review?
Yeah. So like Joe was talking about, and when you get a Google review from somebody, like we have an application that we built that actually can help put that on autopilot. We built it as local rank because we were actually going to release it as a product, but we decided it's so good we're just not going to let anybody else use it, just our clients. And it will automate getting 4- and 5-star Google reviews for your law firm, and it works like butter. And it does a lot more too, but that's really the main function of it. And when you have a happy client and you ask them for a review, they're going to give it to you. Now, if you have an unhappy client, don't ask them for a review because you're begging for a 1, 2, 3-star review, right? You really want to average 4.7 or higher in your Google score. That's really the threshold. But for example, when you close out someone's case, Joe, if they're satisfied with it, and for all the attorneys, take some notes or record this or whatever, go back and listen to it. Here's the pitch to the client. Listen, Joe, as you know, we're a small boutique firm. We really take care of our clients individually. You don't see us on TV or in radio. The way we market our firm and the way we're successful is referrals and positive reviews from our clients. Would you be willing to leave a few words about your experience with my firm on Google for us? If they're happy with your case and they're happy with you, of course they're going to do it. But you got to ask them for it. I'm in this business, and I rarely think about leaving a review for a business unless I have a really good or a really bad experience. I need to get better about leaving reviews everywhere I go because I realize it helps local business, and we're all about local business. If you were a 10-location, 500-lawyer firm, we wouldn't even talk to you. That's not our target. Our target is the solo, small firm with a couple of associates, whatever, kind of level the playing field. And that reviews are so big. Google reviews, Facebook reviews, and don't worry about Yelp reviews. Nobody goes on Yelp looking for lawyers.
No.
But just Google and Facebook, if you focus on those, that's the elephant in the room. That can change your practice. That is the biggest ranking factor.
Without a doubt. That is my biggest seller, because they see, and I can't tell you how many people call because they say, oh, I see your reviews, and that's why I'm calling you. And I do that exactly like you said, John. When I leave courthouse, when I'm leaving the courthouse and I have a good review, if I have a positive outcome, I ask them for the Google review. But I'm going to have to get off this podcast. I'll get with Stephen, I'll get with you, because I do need something where, for example, like 2 days ago, I had a positive case where the father was able to get custody of his daughter. And when he was super, super happy, and walking out of the courthouse, I gave him the spiel about how about, can you please leave me a 5-star review? Absolutely no problem. But if I would have had something right then and there to have him click on his phone to do that, it's in the moment. And I didn't have that, and I don't have that.
We're going to change that. We have that tool now. So when we hang up from this interview, I'll shoot Stephen a quick text to give you a call. I know you got some other stuff to take care of with him, but we'll get you guys trained up on that tool like today or tomorrow. We can train your staff however you want to do it, but it's a powerful tool. And look, for the attorneys out there listening, I'm not trying to sell you our tool. Just get reviews. That's the bottom line, right? The fact is we have tools that help with it because it is so important and it helps us do our job. There's the old saying, right? You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. We don't want it to be a pig. We want your foundations to flourish, because when you have a solid foundation, you can build on it, right? And that's what we do. So reviews are important. You got to get on the map with that.
And you got to be selective. You can't, and I can't tell you how many people call, John, about saying, oh, let me automate your Google reviews. Let me automate your clients, so that we send every client an email asking about their satisfaction with the firm. Like, no, why would I do that? If I lose a case, why would I send somebody who's not happy with the service a review? I'm just asking for a negative review.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
You just have to be selective with who you ask.
Yep. So, that being said, Joe Lawson, super successful. He's an attorney in San Antonio. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you as a client as long as we have. I appreciate that. And today has been awesome. And any attorneys that are listening, it's Joe at jlassonlaw.com is his email. If you have a question, you want to talk to him, he's pretty awesome. As you can see, shoot him an email, right? There's a lot to learn from people that are successful. That's why we bring him and others in his situation as successful as they are on the podcast. The whole point is to teach you how important it is to market your practice, but also how to manage your practice. Things that Joe and other attorneys have learned through trial and error, so you can avoid their pitfalls and take advantage of the things that have worked well for them. And just a plethora of awesome information today, Joe. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining us, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
All right, awesome. Stephen will be reaching out to you shortly. And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Legal Authority Podcast. For more information, go to thelegalauthority.com/podcast. And, if we can be of help in any way, feedback is always appreciated. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Authority Podcast. As always, you can hear us wherever you get your podcast. Please also make sure that you subscribe so that you're notified for each new episode. If you have a question that you'd like answered on the show, or to talk directly to Judy Goldberg, just go to thelegalauthority.com/podcast. Until next time.